Good evening. I am Dr. Jim Beitler, the director of the Wade Center, and I am delighted to welcome you to our Christmas at the Wade event for this year. Yay! It is cold outside, but thanks to the Wade staff, it's cozy and very Christmassy in here. Please help yourself to more snacks after the event. Welcome to those of you joining us online as well. We hope you're cozy as well. If not, grab some cocoa and a blanket for what promises to be a great talk. After our talk, we're going to have a brief Q&A, followed by a drawing. We're giving away this copy of the Oxford Handbook of Christmas. And I also have a special treat in this box for you all to see. If you want to know what's in this present, stay tuned. Our speaker this evening is Dr. Timothy Larsen. Dr. Larsen is McManis Professor of Christian Thought and Professor of History at Wheaton College, and he's many other things as well. I'm going to give you some of his honorary fellowships. He's an honorary fellow of the School of Divinity at the University of Edinburgh, an honorary research fellow at the University of Wales, Trinity St. David. He's been a visiting fellow at Trinity College, Cambridge, All Souls College, Oxford, and Christ Church, Oxford, and is a fellow of the Royal Historical Society and a fellow of the Royal Anthropological Institute. He has been elected president of the American Society of Church History for 2025, and he is the author or editor of 20 books. Dr. Larsen is also a champion of the Wade Center. In 2016-2017, he delivered the Hansen Lectures on George MacDonald in the Age of Miracles, published by IVP, and he's a member of the Wade Advisory Board. Thank you, Dr. Larsen. But all of this is just a prelude to the reason why we invited Dr. Larsen tonight. You see, Dr. He has many other areas of expertise, but one is that he's one of the foremost experts on Christmas. He's the editor of that Oxford Handbook of Christmas, and he also has a new collection, 12 Classic Christmas Stories, a Feast of Yuletide Tales. Dr. Larsen is Wheaton College's very own Father Christmas. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Larsen back to the Wade Center for his talk on the most wonderful time of the year.
Other weird and wondrous things. You may recall that in Little Women, Jo Marsh is putting on a play in their family home on December 25th that she has written herself. It is titled The Witch's Curse. Once again, it might seem a strange theme for Christmas Day. The explanation, again, in my view, is that witches are a core staple ingredient for the genre of fantasy. And as I am observing, there is a substantial connection between the Christmas season and the fantastical. One of the early fantasy writers who most captured the American imagination was Lyman Frank Baum. His 1900 book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, continues to reside in the American imagination. Jane and I went to see Wicked last weekend, and it's having a moment. So Baum's imaginative world is still resonant in American culture. In his own lifetime, The Wizard of Oz was so beloved and successful that Baum went on to write 14 more books set in the same fantasy world. The next one in the series being The Marvelous Land of Oz in 1904. Before that sequel, however, came another Baum book in 1902, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. As the Marvel Universe knows well, every hero needs a backstory, and Baum provides one for Claus. Jane just heroically read the whole thing aloud to me a few weeks ago, so I could entertain you with this. The great forest of Burzee is an enchanted place where magical creatures such as fairies live. They are not normally allowed to leave Burzee, and people are not allowed in. The nymph Necile, however, hears of an abandoned baby just outside of the forest, and she breaks both of the rules by leaving the forest to get him and then bringing him back into Burzee. The master woodsman of the world who rules over the forest, however, decides to pardon Necile and allow her to raise the baby in the forest. His name is Claus. As an adult, he makes a life for himself outside of Burzee. The first toy he ever makes is a wood carving of a cat. As his route of children to whom he gives toys becomes wider and wider, it becomes too far for him to travel. The Prince of the Nooks allows the deer to leave Burzee once a year to speed Claus on his way. I will read you a little passage from this book. Since you all urge me to grant the favor, I will permit the deer to go with Claus once every year on Christmas Eve, provided they always return to the forest by daybreak. He may select any number he pleases up to 10 to draw his sledge, and those shall be known among us as reindeer, to distinguish them from the others. And they shall bathe in the pool of Nars, and eat the cassa and grawl and morbon plants, and shall be under the especial protection of the fairy queen. Thus wrote Frank Baum, the creator of The Wizard of Oz, and thus the world of Wicked. My thesis is that it is not at all surprising, but rather we should find it natural and congenial that a mind that is interested in fantasy worlds is also interested in Christmas. This is where J.R.R. Tolkien enters the story to harumph humbug. C.S. Lewis was excited to share his manuscript of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with Tolkien, and was deeply disappointed when Tolkien was decidedly critical of it. For Tolkien, the goal was to create a complete, self-contained fantasy world that was set apart as a reality of its own. Lewis, he complained, jumbled worlds and realities together. In particular, he disapproved of Lewis introducing Father Christmas. Narnia is a distinct fantasy world, and you can't just add Father Christmas into it. Another member of the Inklings, Roger Green, was less critical than Tolkien, but he too believed that introducing Father Christmas into Narnia was a mistake. It is worth us hearing again a bit of this section from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was a sledge, and it was reindeer with bells on their harnesses. But they were far bigger than the witch's reindeer, and they were not white but brown. And on the sledge sat a person whom everyone knew the moment they set eyes on him. He was a huge man in a bright red robe, bright as holly berries, with a hood that had fur inside it and a great white beard that fell like a foamy waterfall over his chest. Everyone knew him because though you see people of all sort only in Narnia, you see pictures of them and hear them talked about even in our world, the world on this side of the wardrobe. But when you really see them in Narnia, it is rather different. Some of the pictures of Father Christmas in our world make him look only funny and jolly. This is how the scene ends. Then he cried out, "Merry Christmas! Long live the true king!" and cracked his whip. And he and the reindeer and the sledge and all were out of sight before anyone realized that they had started. If I was stranded on a desert island and could only have one or the other, I would unquestionably take The Lord of the Rings rather than the Chronicles of Narnia. Nevertheless, while reading The Lord of the Rings on my desert island, I would hope for a visit from Father Christmas. And I unabashedly side with Lewis rather than Tolkien and Green in this inter-Inklings dispute. By all means, allow Santa Claus to help these children accumulate weaponry. Susan shall have her bow and arrows, Peter his sword and shield, and Lucy her dagger. The reason is simple. We love the magic of fantasy worlds. In the Narnia stories, it includes a teleporting wardrobe and talking beavers and Susan's magical horn. And of course, there is a witch, one who is so prominent as to get second billing in the book's title, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It is exciting to imagine such worlds and such possibilities. Yet it would clearly be a net loss if a fantasy world was deprived of Christmas. Christmas is so wonderful, so magical, that if one wishes to create a wonderful, magical fantasy world, there is a strong desire to include it. No one is hoping for a world where it is never Christmas. An obvious example of this instinct and conviction is the Harry Potter series. Magic wands are good. Magic potions are good. Paintings with ghosts in them that can talk to you, very good. Dragons, hippogriffs, a phoenix, all good. But it would not be as magical as it could be if there was no Christmas. Hogwarts would not be Hogwarts without Christmas. Some splendid magical objects or creatures appear in just one of the books in the series, but Christmas is part of their core magic, appearing in every single one of the 7 books. Usually, a Harry Potter book has an entire Christmas-themed chapter. Moreover, there is no banning of the word Christmas, no war on Christmas of any kind in the Wizarding world. The students at Hogwarts do not have a holiday break or a winter break, they have a Christmas break. Here is a passage from Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The Hogwarts staff, demonstrating a continued desire to impress the visitors from Beauxbatons and Broomstrang, seemed determined to show the castle at its best this Christmas. When the decorations went up, Harry noticed that they were the most stunning he had ever seen inside the school. Everlasting icicles had been attached to the banisters of the marble staircase. The usual 12 Christmas trees in the Great Hall were bedecked with everything from luminous holly berries to real hooting golden owls. And the suits of armor had all been bewitched to sing carols whenever anyone passed them. It was quite something to hear, "O come all ye faithful," sung by an empty helmet. Join me in December at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry and listen to this deep magic. Yea, Lord, we greet thee, born this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be all glory given. Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him. O come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, chapter 23 is Christmas on the Closed Ward. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, chapter 16 is A Very Frosty Christmas. Christmas becomes most sacred, however, in the last book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Harry and Hermione end up in a churchyard on Christmas Eve. They hear the carols that are being sung inside the little church. On Christmas Day, Harry sees a silver doe, which no less an authority than Dr. Sarah Borden assures me can be read as an image of Christ. And then Harry has his doubts dispelled after a kind of baptism by immersion in a lake. Okay, time for a Christmas pub quiz. Don't say your answer out loud, just think to yourself and you'll have the moral satisfaction of getting it right. I'm going to name 3 titles and see if you could guess the very specific thing that they have in common. Last Christmas, A Christmas Carol, and Joy to the World. The answer is they are all episodes of Doctor Who. Other Christmas episodes in that show include The Church on Ruby Road. And nodding back to where we have already been in this talk, another episode is titled The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Doctor Who is the longest running science fiction show in the history of television. It is about an extraterrestrial species from the planet Gallifrey who have the ability to reincarnate and thereby live for centuries. They also can time travel, and our leading character, Doctor Who, has a time-traveling machine which is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, which is super cool. By the way, I've always thought that Wheaton College is also bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, but that's for another talk. Once again, Doctor Who creates a fun fantasy world, but it explicitly includes Christmas, as it would be less fun without it. And another way that fantasy worlds and Christmas cross festively lit paths is with Christmas tree ornaments. Numerous ones are made that depict all the fictional worlds that we have discussed and innumerable others: Oz, Narnia, Hogwarts, Doctor Who, and on. Moreover, let us see if we can even get some flaming rum punch to warm up Tolkien's humbugging heart. To begin, you may or may not know about the Father Christmas letters. Throughout the 1920s and 30s and into the 1940s, the Tolkien children received annually at least one letter from Father Christmas. Many of them recount the mishaps of his accident-prone helper, North Polar Bear. In a very Tolkien sort of way, it is eventually revealed that North Polar Bear's name in his own language is Karhu, that his native language is called Arctic, and a complete alphabet of the script of the Arctic language is eventually provided. Another character is the Man in the Moon. One of North Polar Bear's mishaps temporarily knocks him out of the moon and into Father Christmas's backyard. Father Christmas comments in the letter, quote, "He ate quite a lot of my Christmas chocolates before he said he felt better." There are several different kinds of elves, and there are also goblins, which makes it less clear to me that fantasy worlds should not be allowed to blend. If the world of Father Christmas also includes elves and goblins, then ergo, worlds that include elves and goblins might also include Santa Claus. But wait, there is more. For this talk, I consulted an ordinary standard issue, mass-produced copy for general readers of The Lord of the Rings. At the back, I discovered over 100 pages of appendices covering all manner of topics, ranging from the genealogies of certain characters to, of course, how to decode mythical languages. One section provides a chronology of the events in the story. The last date in this list records the day when the ring falls into the crack of doom, which marks the, quote, downfall of Bardadur and passing of Sauron. That date is March 25th. That is a possible day in the range of dates for the dating of Easter, and I am quite confident that this is intentional, and Easter is indeed being deliberately evoked. Easter, of course, being the day on which Satan is defeated. The real tell in this list of dates, however, is the day when, quote, the company of the ring leaves Rivendell. It is December 25th. In other words, the Fellowship of the Ring sets out on their mission on Christmas Day, and that mission is finally fulfilled on Easter Day. Friends, even the very Tolkien who complained that Lewis was jumbling up separate worlds by introducing Father Christmas into Narnia creates the great drama of Middle-earth so that it begins on Christmas Day. Joy to the Middle-earth world. In the end, Christmas is so wonderful that even Professor J.R.R. Tolkien, purist though he was, could not leave it completely out of his fantasy world. The best of all possible fantasy worlds is one that includes Christmas. Isn't it fun when things we don't think of as being able to levitate magically become able to fly? Flying carpets are good. Flying broomsticks are good. A flying police call box is good. Flying reindeer pulling a sled? Very good. Let the reindeer come forth from the north and forbid them not to fly. Some Christians today are rather nervous about the jolly old elf with the flying reindeer. So I'd like to try to uncover the strong cords that bind together fantasy, Father Christmas, and the Christian faith. It is well known that the emergence and ascendancy of Santa Claus as a well-known figure happened in the 19th century. What has not been appreciated, however, is that this notoriety was the result of a concerted campaign by a range of Christians. If you view it as a conspiracy, it was a Christian conspiracy. St. Nicholas as a magical gift-bearer was introduced into the general consciousness of the English-speaking world by a group of high church Episcopalians in New York City. The most important of these was Washington Irving, who sprinkled into his fanciful history of the Dutch in New York accounts of St. Nicholas flying around in his wagon and coming down chimneys to deliver presents. The scholar Charles W. Jones went so far as to claim Santa Claus was made by Washington Irving. That level of credit, however, is usually given to another New Yorker who was presumably influenced by Irving, Clement Clarke Moore. In 1822, Moore wrote one of the most oft-reprinted poems by an American, A Visit from St. Nicholas, a.k.a. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. In it, St. Nicholas is a jolly, rotund figure dressed in fur who drives a sleigh pulled by reindeer and who spreads Christmas cheer by surreptitiously coming down chimneys to fill stockings with toys. Moore was a devout Episcopalian. His father had been Bishop of New York, and Moore himself taught biblical learning and interpretation of the scriptures at General Theological Seminary. Santa Claus is brought to you by an Old Testament scholar, friends. There are several distinguished ones in the house. His publications include one attacking Thomas Jefferson for not having a sufficiently reverent attitude towards the Bible. The good news of this magical gift bearer spread, and it was enthusiastically propagated by innumerable Christians. People today often think of seeing Santa Claus in a department store, but that practice did not begin until the last dozen years of the 19th century and was confined to cities and large towns. Most children in the 19th century who saw Santa Claus in person met him at their church's Sunday school. This was so much the case that if one wanted to dress up like Santa, the way to acquire your costume was to order it through a religious supplies company. Just to plop down randomly to give a local example, in 1886 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, boys and girls were welcome to both Santa Clausville, sponsored by the Congregationalists, and the gathering of the nations to meet Santa Claus, sponsored by the Presbyterians. By the end of the century, children did not even need to go to a Sunday school event or a department store to see Santa. They could just encounter him as they walked across town, because one of the most theologically conservative of evangelical denominations, the Salvation Army, had started populating street corners with Santa raising money to help the poor. In 1897, Francis Church wrote his famous editorial, commonly known by its first line, "Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus." Francis Church was the religion editor for the Sun newspaper of New York City, the son of a Baptist minister and an Episcopalian. At his death, the paper did not mention his celebrated answer to the question, "Is there a Santa Claus?" But it did run a clergyman's tribute to Francis P. Church, which emphasized his personal Christian faith. In the 19th century, if one were to sneak a peek under a Santa beard, one would usually encounter a devoutly Christian countenance. Once again, the question is why? At least part of the answer is that Santa Claus was a welcome vehicle for expressing the Christian ideal for giving. Jesus instructs his followers to use secrecy. But when thou dost alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret. St. Nicholas was so popular in the medieval period primarily for one act of his, giving money anonymously by throwing it through a window into their house at night so that 3 poor girls could have a dowry. In the 12th century, some French nuns hit upon the pious and happy idea of secretly leaving presents for poor children in the name of St. Nicholas. In later centuries, Europeans credited a variety of other such gift bearers. More's depiction of St. Nicholas, who was soon going by the name of Santa Claus, was the one that best captured the popular imagination in America, and which would go on to sweep many other countries before it. Before they were introduced to Santa Claus, we can sometimes almost sense that Christians felt his absence. George MacDonald, for instance, was given to filling his stories with Christian teaching and even to writing sermons. Word of Santa Claus had not spread widely in Britain until the 1870s. In 1864, MacDonald published My Uncle Peter, a story about a generous Christian man. He would find out that people were in need and then send them money or gifts anonymously, with the attached note saying only, "With Christmas Day's compliments." One senses that both Uncle Peter and George MacDonald would have found it great fun to write instead "From Father Christmas" had they known of such a possibility. The term Father Christmas is the traditional British term, which is a much older term. It just means the spirit of Christmas personified. It's the way that we would say Father Time, to kind of say time personified. But all that America has learned about Santa Claus has been imported to Father Christmas in Britain now. So when they think of Father Christmas, they pretty much think of everything that you think of with Santa Claus. To return to George MacDonald's character, Uncle Peter, and his surreptitious gifts, and indeed this whole Christian tradition. Not only does crediting Santa Claus allow for giving secretly, as Christ counseled, but it also takes away the patronizing tone of the better off giving to the needy and replaces it with lighthearted charm and brotherly mischievousness. Such a service is invaluable. It is hardly surprising that in 1885 there was a Santa Claus Society in London for distributing gifts to the poor. To give in a Christian manner is to be a secret Santa. And it is deeply within the spirit of Christianity to give to your children in such a generous and enchanting way that it not only greatly enhances the delight, but also eradicates all the usual worries about whether or not father and mother can afford it. In short, from a Christian point of view, if Santa Claus did not exist, it would be desirable to invent him. Also, it's fun when things fly. To reiterate, flying carpets are good, Flying broomsticks are good. A flying police call box is good. Flying reindeer pulling a sled, very good. Let the reindeer come forth from the north and forbid them not to fly. People who don't like the flying reindeer don't like fantasy. But people who like fantasy like Christmas. And the best of all fantasy worlds includes Christmas. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. We have some time for Q&A, so I'm going to call you back up to the podium. Okay. I have the mic, and I will pass it around for questions for Dr. Larsen.
I was very interested in your point about March 25th, the date of the destruction of the ring, being associated with Easter. I'm curious if you think the observation that this is also a date when the Annunciation is often celebrated might more strongly support your argument about the celebration of Christmas in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I like that a lot. There are very elaborate calculations that involve March 25th and December 25th, and why people who think that December 25th is the true date of Jesus' birth usually do it through that connection. So yeah, that's another great connection.
John.
Can you say a little bit about the connection specifically of scary stories, ghost stories? You mentioned the witch stories, but Christmas carols got ghosts. There's a big tradition, right, of telling ghost stories. Child's Christmas in Wales, they tell ghost stories on Christmas. So. Yep. So the title of this talk I picked because I had no idea what I would say at this talk when Jim asked me for a title for this talk. So I put the most wonderful time of the year, which I thought gives me a full open hand to talk about whatever I want about Christmas. But it's the most wonderful time of the year because we'll have scary ghost stories and the tales of the glories of Christmases long, long ago. It's still there, even in a popular carol that we still sing and hear on the radio or our playlists. So yeah, I'm making exactly the connection. So a Christmas carol. Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, the subtitle of it is a ghost story. So, it's like it's hiding there in plain sight. There are 3 ghosts, and he's scared by the ghosts. So this is not a subtle thing, and yet we forget that it's a ghost story. It's become so much a Christmas story for us that we forget that it's a ghost story. And again, on Christmas Day, why would you do a play about witches? It feels so different for us, but that's the connection, is I think that this is about fantasy worlds. Ghost stories are about fantasy worlds. They're about things that are not happening in realist novels, that are not happening in kind of utilitarian, pedestrian ways of thinking. You're slipping into this other way of seeing reality, and there's a connection with Christmas. That's my argument.
Yes.
I was just curious what the thought process was when you were picking stories for your book and why you chose these 12.
Thank you. Yeah, so the book is 12 classic Christmas stories. I wanted to call it 12 Days of Feasting, but it turns out evangelicals aren't very good with metaphors. So they thought that would be too confusing for you all. So they said, well, how about if we call it 12 Classic Christmas Stories? That's a very clear title. We deliver. They're all stories. They're all about Christmas, and there are definitely 12 of them. And they're classic, which in my head was code for out of copyright. So I wanted, obviously, stories that I thought were good literature, that worked, that had some kind of impact. I tried hard to pull in authors that you already know and respect. So a kind of standard way that I did, not all of them, for a lot of them was like, here's an author you already know, but you don't know they wrote this Christmas story. Louisa May Alcott is the first one. So Little Women you know, but you don't know this Christmas story of her, but you ought to know it. And it goes like that. And then I wanted to do a variety pack. Every story has a one kind of page, often just a one paragraph introduction by me, which doesn't give any spoilers, but it does allow, so part of the kind of my dream for the book is that families would read them aloud. And it allows you to discern if this seems like the right kind of story for this audience. Our third daughter had a very high standard for how happy a story had to be. So I warn you, if a story's not as happy as some people want happiness to be, if there's something sad in it, I warn you, that kind of thing. And there's a Sherlock Holmes detective story, there's adventure stories, there are romance stories, there are clever plot twist stories. So I kind of like wanted you to think, oh, this sounds more like this. My family might kind of go for this more than that, and so this is the one I choose to read. And so that the variety was the other reason.
I was wondering if you would comment on any connection that you see between the Santa Claus or St. Nicholas figure and religious faith and doubt. And to lead into that, there's a passage from the 94 Miracle on 34th Street that I've always loved, where the character of Dory Walker, who has taught her daughter that there's no Santa Claus, and she's very, very skeptical, has this conversation with Kris Kringle, where she says, I don't think that there's any harm in not believing in a figure that many do acknowledge to be a fiction. And then Kris responds with this, oh, but there is. I'm not just a whimsical figure who wears a charming suit and affects a jolly demeanor. You know, I'm a symbol. I'm a symbol of the human ability to be able to suppress the selfish and hateful tendencies that rule the major part of our lives. If you can't believe, if you can't accept anything on faith, then you're doomed for a life dominated by doubt.
Yeah, lovely. I love that movie. I love both versions of that movie. I like the original better, but the scene where in the original he talks to a girl in Dutch, and in the sequel he uses sign language, and that just breaks my heart. They definitely topped that scene with the second version. I think that both those movies play around with that idea that faith is things that we can't see, and that being willing to accept that, and also both versions of that and other Christmas movies also play around with the fact that maybe you're guarding your heart too close. You've been hurt, and what you're kind of guarding it against is humanity and the joy of life, and maybe that is part of what needs to wear down. I tried to give my best Christian defense of Santa Claus that I could tonight, so you can take that or not as you feel, but I'm kind of on the side of lighten up, it's probably fine, okay? So that's
Tim, if Christmas, or if Santa Claus more or less begins at General Seminary, I'm just curious, where does the earliest suggestion come that Santa Claus might be a pagan, perhaps even evil distraction that true Christians should avoid? Does that come early on, or is it fairly recent in fundamentalism? What do you think?
It's not there. That's what I'm trying to say. It's Christians who are the ones who are most interested in Santa Claus and are helping to spread his fame and celebrate it. And I will say, like, another way around into that conversation is a lot of the things that you hear about Christmas being pagan, for example, were actually manufactured by polemical atheists who were tweaking Christians. They're not true at all. There's no historical root that actually makes those stories work. So that all that stuff about the Christmas tree is really a pagan symbol and stuff like that. It doesn't work historically. It was a way that certain people wanted to de-Christianize the holiday and turn it often, for some of them, into a German nationalist holiday. And that stuff has been tracked very clearly. So that eventually you get
kind of Christians who believe them. The tweaking works, and so they get nervous about all these things. I have an essay in the back of 12 Classic Christmas Stories, which is called Is Christmas Unbiblical or Pagan? I'm very careful not to spoil any of the 12 stories, but I will give you a spoiler for my essay. The answer is no. Christmas is not unbiblical, it's not pagan. I go through a lot of these step by step. Are you nervous about, the winter solstice or whatever? All these things. I go through it and alleviate those anxieties. I wrote it originally for a Reformed Baptist church in Huntsville, Alabama, and they bought it, so you'll buy it too.
Let's thank Dr. Larsen again for a wonderful talk. We have now a drawing. Is this the first drawing in the history of the Wade? Marge, is this the first? This is the first drawing in the history of the Wade Center, and it is for a copy of Dr. Larsen's The Oxford Handbook of Christmas.
Santa Claus and gambling. What's
And it goes to Laura Thornhill. Is Laura Thornhill here? Maybe she's in the overflow. Seriously, we'll hold it for Laura. I have one more gift for all of you. It may be especially for Tim. And it's what's in this box. So before we finish up the festivities and head to the museum for a book signing, we at the Wade wanted to give you a gift. And unfortunately, you can't take it with you. The gift is a Yuletide-themed scholarly rabbit trail. So you get a rabbit trail. You get a rabbit trail. And this rabbit trail, it's going to take about 5 minutes. So just sit tight for 5 more minutes. And it begins nearly 200 years ago in late December of 1830, or thereabouts, when an 18-year-old Charles Dickens writes a letter to his childhood friend, Henry Calla. This was 13 years before Dickens' publication of A Christmas Carol. So let me read you a portion of Charles's letter to Henry. My dear Calla, I'm exceedingly sorry I was so unfortunate as to select last night for my annual visit to Drury Lane, that's the theater district in London, as I should very much have preferred having a cigar and a chat with you. I hope, however, you will give me an early opportunity of doing so. How are you engaged on Christmas Day? If you do not join any family party of your own, will you dine with us? It will, I need hardly say, give us all the greatest pleasure to see you. Young Charles invited his friend Henry to Christmas dinner at his parents' house. It's John Dickens. About this letter, an editor for the correspondence between Charles and Henry, an editor of their letters, writes this: one wonders if the Christmas party at John Dickens' house at Fitzroy Street had anything of the gaiety and spirit of Bob Cratchit's feast. Surely it had, with 2 hosts like young Dickens and his jovial father. No doubt it was a real old English middle-class Christmas, with a punch bowl, many times replenished, a goose, there never was such a goose, songs, round games, and dancing, and the drinking of health. Why am I telling you about Charles Dickens' friend Henry Calla? It's because what's in this present. This is a very special copy of George MacDonald's Diary of an Old Soul. The Diary of an Old Soul contains 7-line devotional poems, one for every day of the year. MacDonald self-published this book in 1880, and he gave it as a gift to his friends. This book, though, isn't just meant to be read, it's meant to be written in. On the right side, the page is blank. On the left side are the poems written by MacDonald. MacDonald says that you are to add to what he's done, to reflect his mind. So you'd read a poem by MacDonald, and then you'd write something in the page next to it. One of the things that makes this particular book special is that George and Louisa MacDonald gifted it to a woman named Charlotte Cola. And it's inscribed as such. The front cover also reads, presentation copy from George MacDonald and Louisa MacDonald to Charlotte Cola. And then somebody added, question mark, is this the daughter of Henry Cola? We don't know. This is a scholarly rabbit trail. But we're not done yet. As you probably know, C.S. Lewis loved MacDonald, right? He loved Fantastes. He said it baptized his imagination, but he also loved this book, Diary of an Old Soul. In a letter from October of 1929, only a few months after C.S. Lewis gave in and admitted that God was God, the most dejected convert in all of England, he told his friend Arthur Greaves that he had been reading a Diary of an Old Soul. And he said, I would have scorned it once, but I strongly advise you to try it. And then, in a letter dated January 26th of 1930, it's this letter. He says, the term is just starting up, and he says, all private reading has ceased. He's writing to Arthur. Except for the 20 minutes before bed, if alone, when I drink a cup of cocoa and try to wash the day off with MacDonald's Diary of an Old Soul. So, based on these two letters, Lewis was reading this book over Christmas in 1929. Here's the thing. I'm not sure exactly how this happened, but this copy, which was given by MacDonald to Charlotte Cole, ended up in C.S. Lewis's hands. I don't know how he got this copy. He did get a copy of A Diary of an Old Soul from Owen Barfield in 1935, but I don't think it's this copy. I think Owen Barfield would have inscribed it. At any rate, this ended up in Lewis's hands, and as much as he loved MacDonald, he did not keep this book. He did with it what A Diary of an Old Soul was made for. He gave it as a gift. In 1952, Joy Davidman visited Lewis and his brother Warnie at the Kilns, and for Christmas of 1952, Lewis gave Joy this copy of this book as a gift, and it's inscribed as such. And on the first day of the new year, in 1963, Joy Davidman heeded MacDonald's call to write on the blank page, and she copied one of Lewis's poems onto that page, An Apologist's Evening Prayer. All that to say, George MacDonald's Diary of an Old Soul is a C.S. Lewis approved, George MacDonald approved, Owen Barfield approved Christmas gift, especially if it's signed. I said at the beginning of this rabbit trail that this is a gift that you can't take with you, but that's not quite true. It just so happens that our speaker tonight, Dr. Timothy Larsen, has a new edition of A Diary of an Old Soul, put out by IVP Academic. And our very own Father Christmas is here for you to sign it. Copies are available in the bookstore. So with that, I'd invite you all into the museum for a book signing. A very Merry Christmas to us all. God bless us, everyone. We're dismissed.